Hello, I'm Chris Lohrstorfer, and on behalf of the Fowler Bible Institute and the Congregational Methodist Church, welcome to the Survey of the Old Testament. The agenda for this course looks something like this. In 9 weeks, we will survey all 39 books of the Old Testament, broken into three-week forums. Each forum will have an instructional video, it will have reading assignments, and an online conversation of which you'll be a part. By the end of this course, my goal is that you'll both know the content and context of the Old Testament, and you'll have the tools and the materials to better teach it to your people. If your people are like the average church congregation, the New Testament is not that difficult for them. Let's face it, most of them understand the culture and context of the New Testament pretty fair. In fact, the story of Jesus, of the cross, and the early church even, is pretty common to them. But as soon as you get into the Old Testament, they begin to get a little afraid. The fact is, there's a lot of issues with the Old Testament that church congregations aren't all that familiar with. For instance, the culture of the Old Testament is somewhat different. The Chaldean, the Babylonian, the Assyrians, they're not familiar with the culture or history of these groups. The real issue with the Old Testament that I find is that the Old Testament is not arranged chronologically. The fact is, the Old Testament developers, those people in the Jewish faith who put this thing together, put it in 5 sections. You know, the Pentateuch, the 5 writings of Moses, the history books like Joshua, Judges, Ruth, etc., the poetry and wisdom books, Psalm, Proverbs, those sort of books, and then major and minor prophets. Those 5 categories are how the Old Testament is put together, and not in chronological order. So, while you may hit some chronology when you're going through Pentateuch, and even as you go into Joshua and Judges, you'll see a chronology. It's working in order. And then all of a sudden, the way it's designed, the Old Testament begins to jump from time period to time period, from context to context, history to history, and that's where most readers get confused and quit. So how do we fix it? How do we help the common church person understand the content and context of the Old Testament? What I'm going to propose to you in these 9 weeks is that we do this. We put the Old Testament in its chronological order in 3 distinct sections. Each forum will cover a section. For instance, this first forum will cover what I call the settlement period, from about 1445, the Exodus from Egypt, all the way to the coronation of Saul as king. We'll look at the books that fit into that time period and their context and history. Then, in the second forum, we'll look at the kingdom period, beginning with Saul and going all the way through to the destruction of Samaria by Assyria and the exile of Judah into Babylon. And then, in the third period, we're going to look at the exile itself and the return to Israel all the way till 430, the writing of Malachi. We're going to see all the books, the prophets, major and minor, all the historical books in their distinct context. And I think what we're going to find is at the end, the books are going to make sense.
When you look at this chart, what you see is that the 3 time periods I just mentioned, the settlement period, the kingdom period, and the exile and return period, are all listed with their dates. And notice, each of the books are listed in their chronological order. So it becomes easier to teach it when you can see each of the books in their respective context. However, notice something. The overall context, the overall story of the Old Testament is fairly simple. God promised the people a land. He gave them that land. They became a great kingdom, but they blew it because of idolatry. God allowed them to be taken into exile, but His promise is true, and He brought them back. That's the story of the Old Testament. Notice the overarching themes you see there. The faithfulness of God, the way that He keeps His promise, His faithful love for Israel and His people, and the fact that sin destroys God's plan. It'll derail God's plan in your life. But God is faithful. He's a redeeming God. That's the story of the Old Testament.